Greetings. Thanks to everyone for coming out to our group author reading. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and non-binary authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual QuickRead sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout we've provided in the chat and by visiting our website, a link to which will be added to the chat at strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. I'd also like to a moment to thank those of you who have made a tip jar donation. We really appreciate it. I'm your host today, Sarah Smith, and you can find out more about me in the provided handout as well. Please note that recording of this session by the audience is not allowed, and recording of electronic communications, including Zoom messages, meetings, and webinars without permission is illegal. Today we'll be featuring 6 authors: Cassandra O'Sullivan Sachar, Nora B. Peevy, Dani Finn, Angela Acosta, Laura Blackwell, and Violette L. Meier. Each author will have 8 minutes to read. Ready? Here we go. Our first reader is Cassandra O'Sullivan Sachar. Cassandra O'Sullivan Sachar is the author of the dark suspense novel Darkness There, But Something More, the short horror story collection Keeper of Corpses and Other Dark Tales, the middle grade mystery The Hidden Diary, the horror novella Close the Door, and the young adult thriller Lake of Secrets. Cassandra, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I've given many readings, but I think this might be my first one over Zoom. So I'm going to probably have some flashbacks of teaching during the pandemic. But here I am, and I'm reading from my book, Darkness There, But Something More. And I thought a lot about where to read from because I don't like to give spoilers. So I decided I'll start right from the beginning. Prologue. They enter the path in single file, a curving snake of girls, the sorority pledge mistress at the helm. At midnight in October, only the narrow flashlight beams and glow of the full moon illuminate the way through the blackened forest. Clad in thin t-shirts and boxer shorts, the pledges tremble and quake. Even the sisters, properly attired in winter coats and hats, feel the chill, but the pledges are quivering gooseflesh. The howling wind whips their hair around their heads and bites their exposed skin. Faster, the pledge mistress says over the crunch of the crisp, dead leaves on which they walk. The naked trees stretch out above, their long limbs reaching out to poke or prod. Ice cold, the girls tread over jagged rocks that stub their sneaker-clad toes. The chatter of her teeth pounds in the girl's head, filling the near silence. Her meager clothes, stiff with grime, reek of body odor. Pledges are not allowed to shower during Hell Week. The acrid taste of bile fills the girl's mouth as she trudges on toward whatever horror the pledge mistress has planned. Numb. She feels numb, both in body and spirit. What is she doing here? Why walk half naked in the freezing night when she could be curled up in bed in her dorm room under a comforter? All of this misery for the privilege of wearing some stupid Greek letters? All of this stress and drama to belong to the organization of her tormentors? A tear creeps down her face, its warmth a tiny comfort. Stop. We're here. There's a slight smile in the pledge mistress's voice, but all the girl can see in the faint light is a great chasm. The assistant pledge mistress, the kinder, gentler one, takes over. Clearing her throat, she begins her speech. This is the Cliff of Life ritual. Pledges, if you want to belong to the sisterhood, you need to stand here in solidarity, holding hands and leaning on each other for support. You'll get through this, just as all of us sisters have gotten through similar trials. And when you leave, you'll be that much closer to joining our sisterhood. Come. At first, none of the pledges moved, other than the shivers convulsing through their bodies. But then one steps forward to the cliff's edge, and then the next, until all 5 girls stand in a row, linked together by their hands. The sisters watch, rapt with attention, waiting to criticize any signs of weakness. The pledges tremble as they wait, either for relief or more punishment. Minutes tick by. The girl opens her jaw wide, like a cobra, trying to ensure that her facial muscles still work in the frigidity. She dare not drop her pledge sister's hands. Other than the heavy breaths and intermittent mules and whines of the pledges, only the wind's low moan punctuates the quiet. A scream cuts through the night. And I'm reading just from the very beginning of chapter 1. 2 boxes. That's what it took to pack away the remnants of my career. 2 cardboard boxes I pilfered from the copy room. I remembered arriving at Sainsbury University years earlier with little more than a ton of books and my newly framed PhD. Nervous as hell, but thrilled at securing a tenure-track assistant professor gig in the English department. Looking at the blank, beige walls of my office, I felt a frisson of loss. I had seen myself growing old here, had imagined presenting a diploma to my son or daughter as they walked across the stage at graduation. But that was a pipe dream. I'd never again set foot on Sainsbury's campus, and there would never be a son or daughter to present a diploma to, here or anywhere else. Helen, the secretary, popped her head in my doorway. "I'm so sorry, Marissa. I wish things could have been different." She looked down with watery eyes. She meant well, but Helen could be a bit much. I held back a sigh and slapped a fake smile on my face. Over the last couple of years, I'd become a pro at acting like everything was okay when I wanted to curl up and cry. I didn't get fired, Helen. I resigned, and I have a new job. It's time that I moved on. I know, but it's just so sad. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. And he's just strutting around campus with that chippy of his, rubbing it in your face. And now you're leaving. Like I needed a reminder. We're divorced, and I need a fresh start. I stacked one box on top of the other. I didn't want to take another trip, even if this one would be a struggle. Helen, I sincerely want to thank you for your help over the years. Sure, things could have been different, but this is where they are now, and I'm okay. Really. If I told myself that enough, maybe I'd believe it. So I left. I walked out that door and off campus for the last time, hoping some of my baggage would remain behind. And folks, that is my brief reading from Darkness There, But Something More. It is a riff on Poe's line from The Raven, Darkness There and Nothing More, because even with all of the troubles, Marissa still had something more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cassandra. Our second reader is Nora B. Peevy. Nora B. Peevy works for Journalstone, Trepidatio Publishing as a submission reader and reviewer. She is a syndicate author for Thrill Ride e-zine, edits for Bainham Books Press, and narrates the Midnight Manuscripts podcast. Her quirky tales are published by Carnage House and other places. Nora, over to you.
Okay, I'm going to be reading from a podcast that is actually free for everyone to listen to. It's called the Wicked Library Podcast. I'm reading from The Children of the Dream Root. Talia Ma rubbed me vigorously with thick, yellow, pungent shark oil. My skin felt slick and shone in the sun. She dipped her fingers in a shallow bone dish and drew a spiral in purple clay on both my cheeks. So you remember the cycle of life has no ending and no beginning. Then she drew the tree of life on my belly, and beneath it the same drawing upside down. As above, so below. Talia Ma finished by marking me with her thumbprint in the middle of my forehead. So your eyes shall open. She led me to the mouth of the cave. Dark and chilly, it smelled of brine and sea life. I tasted the ocean on my lips. Talia Ma took my smooth hand in her wrinkled palm. It felt warm and tender. Repeat after me, Amelin. She straightened her shoulders back, and the wind whipped her hair about like a sea temptress. My ancestors wild and free, she intoned in a low voice. My ancestors wild and free, I repeated after her. I felt the sand between my toes as I shifted my weight. Guide me on my journey, she chanted. Open my eyes that I might see, and whisper your knowledge onto me. For the truth I ask, by the power of 3 by 3, as I will it, so mote it be. As I will it, so mote it be, I finished after her. Go, child, and do not linger, for some spirits mean you harm. Look for the lights to set you on your path, and take this. She pressed the bowl of purple clay to my naked chest. You must leave your print on the wall so you can find your way back to the physical world. She smoothed my hair behind her ear. She smoothed my hair behind my ears like she had done so many times when I was a child after my mother passed. She cradled my chin in her loving hands. I have faith in you, Amelin. And then she nodded toward the dark entrance. I stepped into the cave of my ancestors. The bone bowl clutched to my breast, the sand rough and damp beneath my feet. I heard the shushing of the water traveling into the cave from the sea. Only a few hours remained before the tide filled this place to the roof. Shaking with cold, I was glad for the shark oil protecting my skin from the wind blowing and the cold sea I waded into. As I approached the first bend in the cave, I marveled at all the handprints left behind by my people and remembered the bowl of purple clay I carried. I pressed my left hand into the bowl, the cool clay drawing away the heat of my nervousness. I waded a little further in near a natural shelf in the cave wall, where others had left their bowls. I found an empty niche in the rock wall and sat down my bowl, pressing my handprint into the cool rock. I was surrounded by hundreds of my ancestors' palm prints, overlapping as far as I could see before the light from the mouth of the cave faded. I felt my ancestors pulling me through time, darkness pressing against me like a giant cat, smothering me, threatening to snatch my breath away. The kava had taken full effect by now. My mind and body remained calm, even though I should have been afraid. As I walked further on, the sandbar dropped out from beneath my feet, and I scrabbled for purchase with my toes, but found none. The shark oil Talia Ma slathered on my skin barely insulated me from the icy black waters, and my teeth began to chatter, but I could not turn back. Hundreds of boys and girls before me had entered the cave and found their ancestral spirit who revealed their gifts and what clan they would marry into. I could not fail where so many others succeeded. My people needed me. I treaded water to get my bearings. It would be easy to get turned around in the dark water and become lost forever. Some did not emerge from the cave. I tried not to panic and waste energy. Imagine them lying on the floor of their watery grave, their bones becoming a garden of kelp, their hair swaying with the tide, their jaws open in silent screams no one ever heard, tiny red ghost fish swimming through their empty eye sockets. Maybe the kava was no longer working. No, this would not be my fate. I would not die here in this cave, not after all I had borne witness to since the war against the reptilians had begun. I would remember for my people, for generations to come, what had happened here the day the reptilians invaded our planet. I breathed in through my nose and out through my mouth, centering myself. the taste of brine thick in the air. I heard water dripping on stones somewhere in front of me and breaststroked in that direction. My pupils had adjusted to the dark, and I saw a faint light up ahead from above. I could see different shades of black as I swam forward, some denser than others. Stalactites clung to the ceiling. Something large scuttled overhead, its heavy body scraping against rock. I swam face first, unexpectedly, into a stalactite and a whip spider. Amazingly, it had adapted to the chilly environment. I held my breath. The 2-foot spider extended its long antennae-like front legs, searching for prey. It walked a few inches closer to my face than I was comfortable with, but I was afraid if I startled it, it would jump on my face. I noted the pair of eyes at the front of its carapace, and 2 smaller groups of 3 eyes further back on each side of its head. Its body was broad and mottled gray to blend it into its cave dwelling and defend itself from predators. Its raptorial front pedipalps were modified for grabbing prey with mantis-like speed, with huge pincher-like glycerine to grind and chew its dinner. From what I remembered from reading and spelunking as a child, they normally did not attack unless irritated. And if you liked this reading, I do have a giveaway. It's called Necronomicon for those who love Cthulhu mythos, and it's cozy mythos where it's romance from the Cthulhu universe. So I hope you will sign up for my giveaway. And that's been my reading. Thank you.
Necronomicon, I love it. Thank you, Nora. Our third reader is Dani Finn. Dani Finn is a non-binary author of queer fantasy and romance. From swords and sorcery to sword-free fantasy and everything in between. Dani, it's yours.
Thank you. I'll be reading from The World Within, which you can see here. It is a high-heat, cozy, trans-sapphic fantasy romance. It's set in a wellness center, complete with baths, spa, and a sex shop, and as it turns out, a mystic portal in the basement. Lila is the owner of The World Within. She is a transcendent woman, that is the word for trans in this world, who socially transitioned long ago but has not dared to begin alchemical transition. When her scholar friend Sylvan revives the ancient mystic portal, which he calls a sooth mirror, Lila sneaks down there one night to see, well, I'll let the passage speak for itself. A reminder that I'll be giving away 3 personalized signed ebooks of The World Within after the reading. You might wonder what a signed ebook is. They're very cool. They're signed, and take a picture of the signing and add it to the ebook, and the ebook has your name in it. Anyway, don't forget to enter. So this is a scene in which Lila is looking into the sooth mirror, and the sooth mirror tells you truths that may or may not be exactly true, but there's always some grain of truth there. The silence in the circular room was eerily absolute. Each sandaled footfall down the stone steps echoed back to her in 1,000 not quite synchronous iterations. She stood before the podium with its gleaming bronze tubes, the startlingly clear crystal ball, and the mesh gloves whose texture she could feel on her fingers long before she touched them. She shouldn't be doing this. She shouldn't even be down here by herself late at night without Sylvan to step in if something went wrong. She was out of her depth, chasing a foolish vision. She pulled the lever down. Mist rose from the water, filling the arch in seconds with an even layer of gray nothingness. She slipped her hands into the gloves, feeling a slight tingle as her fingers slid all the way into the solid ends. She closed her eyes, digging deep in her memory for the image she kept locked away for all those years, the woman in the paisley dress. Lila had seen her at the market one day, studying linens, non-painted but well-off, wiry black hair pulled back by a simple yet elegant scarf. Her dress was a tan and purple paisley pattern, sleeves rolled up neatly past her strong forearms. It clinched tight at the waist, curving over her tight hips and high bosom, a perfect fit to Lila's young eyes. She'd hardly considered wearing a dress at that point, though she'd studied her mother's and sister's wardrobes with great care. Something about the way this woman carried herself had struck Lila, not just her dress, nor her figure, nor her sharp-eyed expression, as she expertly examined the weave of the cloth. It was the ease with which she carried her womanhood, the strength of her that stuck in Lila's mind as she lay awake in that night, and many nights afterward. As she built up the image of the woman she wanted to become, she'd always look back to the woman in the paisley dress, studying linens in the market. She was unpainted, unself-conscious, and unfettered by concern for anyone else's opinion of her. In Lila's mind, anyway. She was truly free. Lila had often imagined herself living as that woman, choosing the colors and styles she would cover herself with. Sometimes she wondered, if she'd been born into a different body, what would it look like? Would she be slender like her mother, or curvy like her sister? Would she be as tall as she was now? What kind of muscles would she have? Would her behind be round and jiggly or hard and muscular? And gods, what a nightmare it would be to have monthly cycles to deal with. As she grew into her teenage years, sometimes she would strip naked and stare into the mirror, covering her privates and pushing her arms together to create the illusion of breasts. There was no way to tell what she would look like, of course, given how different people in the same family looked. And she didn't hate her body. She had well-defined muscles, her behind was nicely curved, and people of all genders seemed drawn to her. Still, she would have given anything to know what she would have looked like if her parents' seeds had mixed in a slightly different way. Lila opened her eyes, and the mist faded. What she saw instead was a near-perfect reflection of the room, with bright stone lights, round walls, and a podium just like the one she was standing at, with a crystal ball and bronze tubes and a pair of gloves. The only thing different was the person standing at the podium. She was half a head shorter than Lila, with copper hair worn in ringlets that dangled impeccably around her forehead and ears. She was painted a muted pink, with mauve on her full lips and around her eyes. She quirked a smile, her green eyes twinkling. Lila gasped as she recognized the look she had practiced in the mirror 1,000 times. This was her. The woman's face was softer than Lila's, her cheeks wider, her chin more rounded perhaps, but the resemblance was no less clear. Below her painted neckline, her purple and black striped dress swelled with a modest bosom, and the curve of her hips was just visible around the edge of the podium. Lila sucked in a loud gasp, having forgotten to breathe for a moment. Tears streamed down her face, but with her hands in the gloves, she was helpless to stop them. The woman's brow furrowed, her kind face softening into an understanding smile. She looked Lila up and down and blinked approvingly, her smile widening. Lila's tears poured forth, blurring the vision, and she craned her neck to wipe her eyes on her shoulder. "My gods, she gasped for air between sobs. "You're so beautiful." The woman closed her eyes slowly, then opened them again. "I'm you." Her voice echoed through the chamber, or through Lila's mind. It was impossible to tell. Lila's body rippled with goose flesh. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Sylvan had said this was a projection only. The image flickered, and the woman looked around the edges of an arch in annoyance. "Wait," Lila cried. "Don't go! You can't go! The image began flickering rapidly. The woman slid her hands out of her gloves, pressed them together at her chest, and vanished. Steam rose with a hiss from the well, which was bubbling rapidly, its water frothy and pink. Lila slid her trembling hands out of the gloves and slumped against the podium, sliding down until she lay in a ball on the floor. Her brain felt empty, as if she'd just taken 100 final exams and failed all of them. Her eyes fell on a rolled-up sleeping mat next to the stairs. She summoned the energy to unroll it and flop onto it. She lay there, staring at the bright stone lights, listening to the fizzing of the well slowly die down. She was supposed to be feeling something. She was sure of it. But the lights were so bright, even when she closed her eyes. If she rolled onto her side, it was better. She could do this. She could do this. And that is it.
Very nice, Dani. People are saying you should do audiobooks. Our fourth reader is Angela Acosta. Angela Acosta is an assistant professor of Spanish at the University of South Carolina. Her Riesling and Pushcart Prize nominated writing has appeared in Apparition Lit, Radon Journal, and Space and Time. She is author of the bilingual speculative chapbook, A Belief in Cosmic Dailiness, from Red Ogre Review. Angela, it's yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to read some speculative poetry with strong room in strange worlds. This is from my collection of Belief in Cosmic Dailiness, published by Red Ogre Review. But I couldn't resist also including a poem that was published recently outside of the collection. So this is a collection of poems that tell stories, often in English and sometimes in Spanish or somewhere in between, of coming-of-age rituals, companionship, and work responsibilities that are not too different from 20th century human society on Earth. So this first poem is going to be from outside the collection, and it's titled Rewilding the Axolotl from Starline, the magazine of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association, Volume 47, Number 2. That's the April 2024 issue. So this is Rewilding the Axolotl. Some of the smallest survivors of the Mexica civilization live underwater, bobbing along Lake Xochimilco like before the conquest. Here their stories float with little bubbles, all-knowing smiles wise with generations of treacherous secrets. When the lakes become congested with processions, algae strewn like fallen papel picado and trash, the axolotls domesticated themselves, breathing air in unison for the first time. They complained about their living conditions, thus convincing humans to shelter these forever young amphibians tickled pink with their charm. Lab-grown, rambunctious amphibians vied for a prime spot in the ISS student experiments, crawling aboard among plant seeds and cardboard cutout solar panels. These almost stowaways made it to the lunar gateway, then on to Mars, where they would dive and dine in waters melted from frozen rocks. The rewilded axolotls were known to climb out of the water to watch rocket launches, never desiring to go further than their one perfect pond on the Martian surface. So the next poems I'm going to read will be from the collection A Belief in Cosmic Dailiness, and this is the titular poem, A Belief in Cosmic Dailiness. To be young in an old cosmos leads you to every sort of adventure, floating idly through low-orbit habitats, racing through arcane atmospheres in full display of curious wildlife. Wherever you are, the most normal urges settle in after waking up from a long nap. A stim fix, like oil to stiff robot joints. They move we, the living, through the most mundane planetary rejuvenation efforts. The thrills of AI-enhanced mountaineering. Love hurts the same at 19 or 200. Precipitation harries the masses regardless of whether it's sulfuric acid rain or liquid iron, dripping on the vat-grown or the tentacled denizens of gas giants who sleep for centuries. Throughout the many vibrant realms of this fabled universe, our cultures may seem strange, our locomotion and sleep habits as diverse as planets, though a belief in cosmic dailiness persists. For where would we be without the ties that bind our orbits and futures together? The next piece I'm going to be reading is actually a prose poem, which I think was what really started this collection and thinking about how I could create coziness around a campfire with some interesting characters. So this is For You, Fellow Galactic Denizen. For you, fellow galactic denizen, I find my followers, those with tails, puffed ears, or feathers, all imploring me to provide them with relatability and a cosmic sensibility. They sit around campfires roasting s'mores, or setting them on fire with flaming appendages, as I share sci-fi folk music in Spanish about multicultural civilizations and the dalliances of young adults parading around star systems like checker pieces. For you, fellow galactic denizen, I write what sits heavy in those human hearts, the fears that haunt our kin with the zest of optimism and the insights of our elders. Perhaps inner-ear translators struggle with shards of existentialism as my emerging voice cracks in its solemn duty of poetic adolescence. You listen patiently for the heart and hearth each tiny, marbled world creates until skies darken, gravity adjusts, and you're wearing your coziest pajamas, content to bask in the messiness of existing as a sentient being in this fabled universe. I now have a short poem titled Idle Dreams. Idle dreams. Dreaming of a sky ripped by satellites, they revel in receiving binary sunbeams, teetering between the possible and the artificial. Soon they would arrive to see with human eyes what their ancestors once rendered on computers or depicted in two-dimensional schematics, their daydreams becoming the idle serenities of contented boredom for those made of stardust. And I actually translated that one into Spanish, so if you want to see the Spanish version, you'll have to check out the collection. This next poem is also a prose poem titled Spaceport Ethnography. Spaceport Ethnography. It was the gentle whirring of the terminal, the rush of flurried rockets coupling to docking bays that lulled me into a restful sleep. Warm-blooded spacefaring peoples keep the temperature comfortable, perfect for an hour in a nap pod to wash down this layover with natural sleep before chemicals drown out the 50 light-year voyage. I stir as the vacation sim ads emblazoning the walls chime obnoxious tunes for weary travelers, and frequent flyers shuffle towards their destinations. In training, they said that this would become mundane. I would, in time, become accustomed to nanobots, intravenous impulses, and the toys of the 25th century. What they should have told me before hopping across 3 centuries was that boredom is universal after enough sleepless nights. I've seen enough teary goodbyes for 2 lifetimes and heard enough groans when shuttles are delayed. Before boarding, I see Agent Lambda still as bleary-eyed as before, and I know it has hit him too. Maybe next stop we'll catch the latest holovid and settle into the time for a change. Until then, I write these notes for those of our ancestors still scared of losing their humanity to spaceflight, not realizing that they are the ones weaving a web between our faster-than-light lives, a true gift sent upstream. And I'll end with a short poem titled Millennium Credo. Millennium Credo. If you could give more life, a year or so, to a deserving mortal, would you choose the Millennium Credo? Would you follow human duty, filial piety, galactic sovereignty, or would you be ravaged by guilt? Did you ever think a single moral coin toss would cascade further than your own conscience when you play with such tender lives? It is more than a single choice to administer this credo with a robot. A plethora of parallel universes will respond in turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Everybody's loving the space pajamas and the many other wonderful things you had to say. Our 5th reader is Laura Blackwell. Laura Blackwell is a Shirley Jackson Award-winning author of speculative fiction. Her work has appeared in magazines and anthologies, including Nightmare, Pseudopad, Cat's Cast, and Shirley Jackson Award winner Aseptic and Faintly Sadistic. She is copy editor for the Deadlands, and she and Daniel Marcus co-host the online reading series Story Hour. Lara, it's yours.
Hello. This story first appeared in Nightmare in July 2022, and it is a sort of a Bluebeard retelling with a little bonus necromancy. This is what the dead birds taught me. The first time I saw him, I was crouched in a ditch by the highway, lancet poised, holding a crumbly paged book open to the words to reanimate a dead owl, and leaned against our dad's old car on the shoulder, just a few feet past the impromptu memorial some of Mom and Dad's students had put up. The flowers were wilting and the photos were fading, just like our parents' ghosts in the ditch where they'd died. I walked all up and down it, grass is itching at my legs despite my jeans, but there was no spark of Mom or Dad, just like there had been none in the closed caskets. They'd moved on easily, or maybe been gone too long. It had been almost a month. I had just found the owl, crawling with ants, but its eyes barely milky. Anne examined the poor thing and said it probably died from eating poisoned rats. I was getting ready to lance some blood from my finger when the man pulled his shiny black car over, trapping our car between his and the memorial. Not on purpose, I thought at the time. He was fair-skinned, with neatly trimmed hair and a nice button-down. His leather-soled dress shoes crunched on the gravel on the shoulder until he was close enough to ask Anne in a pleasant, regular voice, not a shout, "Do you need help, miss?" "No, thanks," said Anne curtly. "We're just here for a project." She nodded in my direction, and he turned to take in the sight of me, 17 and looking younger, face round as a child's and chest flat as a boy's. Anne's 8 years older than me, and she looks young too, short and freckled. But even then, she had soft curves and sad eyes. "Hello," he said to me, friendly and helpful. "So you girls are all right then?" I appreciated the manners, but I was old enough to know the look a boy gives you when he realizes he won't get anywhere with your prettier friend unless he's nice to you too. I just hadn't seen it from someone his age before. He looked older than Anne, but not nearly as old as our parents. 30s, maybe. "We're almost done," I assured him. Anne thanked him and told him to drive safe. A neat dismissal, polite in words and rude in tone. My cheeks heated with embarrassment, and I went back to the owl. I didn't want anything from it, and I wasn't sure I could do whatever it asked. I'd told a dead squirrel I'd looked after its babies once, although I had no idea where to find them. But it was good practice for bigger reanimations. With the dim spark inside it, the owl asked to get out of the hot sun. I drew the patterns in my blood on the back of my hand, whispered an incantation of the book. It's amazing what you can find used in a university town. And told the owl to fly away and finish decaying on the welcome mat of the only house in sight. It was spiteful of me, but I couldn't think of anything else to ask, and it has to be a favor for a favor. "Mary, you gotta stay away from men like that," Anne told me when I came back to the car. She was a stricter parent than our parents had been. "He has death on his hands." Anne had no interest in necromancy, but she had the knack all the same. "He could be a veteran," I said, trying to be charitable, or maybe just show Anne she didn't know everything. "Or he might work in a slaughterhouse." Anne pressed her lips together. "I don't think so." The next time I saw him was about 4 years later. Lots of people invited Anne and me to their various churches after our parents died, and once they stopped asking, I started going. It seemed like a likely place to meet people interested in life after death. I met him officially at one of those churches, the one that had a stained glass window of a dove pieced out in white against blue. Although I'd filled out and looked a lot like Anne had the first time we'd met, he didn't seem to recognize me, and I didn't remind him. I saw the deaths on his hands. Were there more than before, or had I remembered wrong? But he was always well-dressed and polite, good manners, always with a smile that didn't so much play on his face as just sit there, a fixture, like the carefully knotted necktie below it. Sometimes he ushered, showing grateful old ladies to their seats. They beamed up at him, eyes lit from within by his attention, invited him to meet their daughters or nieces or granddaughters. Anne didn't come to church with me, so she didn't have anything new to say. I learned his name, although I dislike saying it now. Anne had control of the family trust, and she knew the smart thing to do was sell the house that we grew up in and buy a small condo to share. The two of us were right on top of each other, driving each other nuts. When Anne and I did talk, we argued more and more. The trust paid for my college and her grad school, and it would pay for my grad school if I went. My senior year of college, she nagged me constantly. She wanted me to spend more time building my portfolio and applying to MFA programs, less time reanimating dead animals. Anne didn't understand. She was a biologist, like Mom and Dad, who specialized in birds, not like Mom and Dad. So she was both more practical and more head in the clouds than me. Neither Anne nor I could help being haunted, but we handled it differently. The sadness in her eyes had distilled into a brisk determination. And that's a good place to stop. So you can read the rest of that at Nightmare. And if you'd like to read more of my work, please sign up for a giveaway.
Oh, that's not a good place to stop. You've left us dangling. Thank you, Laura. Our final reader is Violette L. Meier. Atlanta native Violette Meier is a happily married mother, writer, and folk artist. She is also a certified herbalist, a chaplain, and an educator. Her eerie and unpredictable paranormal fantasy and horror stories recreate myths and legends and fashion new folklore. Violet, take it away.
I'll be reading from my paranormal novel, Oracles. What you doing? Violet asked, plopping down in my rocking chair as I pushed myself into a sitting position. I pulled the covers off my legs and tossed my legs off the side of the bed. I looked down at my ashy feet as my toenails scraped the floor. My toenails look like talons. One day I'll take the time to clip them. Maybe I was turning into a wild thing like a creature in one of Violet's storybooks. I voice activate the lamp and instruct Violet to open the curtains by pushing a button on the nightstand. Sunlight changes the entire energy of the room. It instantly renews every cell in my body. Suddenly, a new birthday doesn't seem so annoying. Just waking up, I answer, looking at the digital holographic clock hovering over my nightstand. It was 7:59 a.m. Why are you up so early? I ask her as she rocks back and forth, swinging her legs like she's on a playground swing. The chair groans like an old man. It's Wednesday. Why aren't you in school? Because it's your birthday, Violet exclaims. Mama says turning 101 is a big deal. Aunt Chloe once told me that 101 was the angel number for happiness and prosperity. Do you believe that? Could be. Anything is possible, I reply with a yawn. She also said today we're going to party like it's 1999, Violet said, scratching her head, confused about what that meant. That song is nearly a century old, and I'm surprised her mother knew the lyrics. But then again, Prince is and will always be my favorite musical artist of all time. My children grew up on his music, and when my grandchildren and great-grandchildren visit me, they too became familiar with his ear-piercing falsetto and his sacrosanct sexuality. I love everything about that little musical mastermind. If I had any musical ability, Prince is who I'd channel. For a moment, I consider placing my music microchip into my ear and playing Prince's greatest hits, but I'm sure Violet would not let me listen in peace. Per her request, I would have to blast it loud through the ceiling speakers, and frankly, it was way too early in the morning for that type of noise. Way too early for any type. What does your mama have planned? I asked, a little anxious about Sage's plans. Sage always went over and beyond what was humanly necessary to do. She was a perfectionist in the worst way and habitually slunk away from gratification like it was the plague. Watching her frown and fret over every single detail was torture. Sage could make a person feel guilty about having a birthday because of all the trouble of celebrating would cause her. I'm glad I won't be around for her to plan my funeral. When I turned 100, she made a movie about my life consisting of old videos and photographs. It was a nice sentiment until she rented out a local theater to show it and invited everyone in town. I had to wait in line for 30 minutes to see my own movie, and she stressed herself over cold popcorn and incorrect digital tickets until she fainted and had to be fanned back into consciousness. I can't tell you, Violet says as she hops off the rocking chair onto my bed. The bounce nearly catapults me across the room. I grip the mattress to balance myself and exhale. Can I do your hair? She asks as she twists my silver locks into hoops and pins them to the top of my head. I lift myself so she can pull the ones free that I'm sitting on. I sit back on the bed. Looks like you're already doing it, I retort while yawning. I sit as still as I can as my great-granddaughter styles my hair. My dreadlocks are floor length. It amazes me how effortlessly gathers my blue-gray ropes of hair and turns them into flower petals. She pulls the last bobby pin from her pocket and places it in my hair. Done, she exclaims and bolts over to the rocking chair. I stand up and walk over to the cherry wood vanity that sits in the corner of my room, pull the emerald cushioned seat and sit down. I look into the mirror and smile. Violet does exquisite hair just like her grandmother, my daughter Chloe. Thank you, baby, I reply as I put a thin coat of pink lip gloss on my lips and give myself an air kiss into the mirror. I swear the lip gloss and hairstyle takes 20 years off my face. I don't look a day over 80. You're welcome, my lily, Violet replies as she rocks like a mad woman in the chair. Bring me my owls, I instruct while admiring my hair in the mirror. Violet hops off the chair and crosses the room and opens the top drawer of my jewelry armoire. She pulls out 2 sterling silver necklaces, both with large owls hanging from them and matching pair of earrings. After she hands them to me, I put on both necklaces, one owl hanging lower than the other, and put on the dangling earrings. I look at myself again in the mirror and smile, extremely pleased with Violet's handiwork. I feel beautiful. A shadow moves on the opposite side of the room, its dark reflection appearing like a man made of smoke. My chest constricts and I gasp aloud. I spin around. Nothing is there. The room falls silent. The screeching rocker squeals no more. Violet sits in the rocking chair as if time has stopped. Her small face flushes red and her back is stiff as a board. Are you okay, baby? I ask her as a shiny tear makes its way down her cheek. Did you see it? She whimpers. I saw it, I confess. I want to deny it, but there's no use. Violet and I were both born with a veil, born with 2 crowns on our heads, like the ancestors used to say. It was one of the things that help us forge an intimate relationship. Her mother cannot see, but her grandmother Chloe can, and so can Violet's older brother Uriah. It's coming to get you, my lily. I saw it, Violet whines. I don't want you to go. I stand up and walk over to my great-grandchild. I instruct her to stand up so I can sit down. My knee is hurting a little. Rain must be coming. Violet sits on my good knee. She feels heavier than she did yesterday. There's a season for everything under heaven, I reply. A time to laugh and a time to cry. A time to live and a time to die. If you'd like to read more, you can pick up Oracles on violetmeier.com or Amazon.
Oh, Violet, thank you. Lovely story. And thank you so much to everyone who read and everyone who came today.